Hi, my name is Barbara Ostrowska, and I am first and foremost a teacher and a psychologist. And I work with Think Foundation as well on this project. However, as I said, my main occupation is being a psychology teacher and theory of knowledge teacher in a school in Lublin, Poland, which is southeast. And as Bart said, I am going to present a more theoretical background to active learning. However, I hope to introduce some of the examples as well. So hopefully it will be helpful for you as teachers as well. So let's start. You probably are all familiar with the cone of learning, which is attributed to Edgar Dale, which starts to define active learning as the most effective way of learning related to learning outcomes like analysis, like creation, like defining or evaluation. And of course, this learning cone might be traced back to the times of Confucius, who said that I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, and I do and I understand. In general, active learning is a form of learning in which students are engaged and involved in the learning process, and it is usually thought as an alternative to a traditional frontal transmission of knowledge. And it can range from self-directed learning, where students themselves are in control of their learning process and all the decisions and goals that they would like to achieve, as well as the activities. But it can also take a form of independent learning with goals and activities designed by the teachers, and the control given to the students to actively pursue them by using their higher order thinking skills, metacognitive skills, reflection, and making decisions on the way as they go through the activities, and of course working in a group as well. And during active learning, teachers emphasize the development of the skills more than they want to transmit the knowledge. Whereas the students are active and engaged actors and taking ownership of the learning process. And they play the most prominent role. And students are doing something, they are thinking about what they are doing and reflecting on that. And because of that, they are learning. Active learning requires students to think hard, think creatively, and to practice using new knowledge and new skills to develop long-term recall and deeper understanding. And I think this is the most important thing when it comes to active learning. It engages students in reflection, in writing, in talking, in discussing about what they are learning, and it makes the knowledge stick with them. It creates a more long-lasting and better understanding of the knowledge. And of course, there are many theories related to active learning, among other, of course, the constructivism, but also things like scaffolding, like Bloom's taxonomy, which you could see linked to the cone of learning at the very beginning, things like inquiry-based and problem-based or experiential learning. So many different theories that we might connect to active learning. They are all great examples of that. And I think that a very short introduction to constructivism is also important here. So basically, constructivism states that active learning is a process of creating meaning, and new learning occurs when students make connections to their existing concepts, knowledge, and experience. So it's it does not happen in a vacuum. The students are not blank slates. They have their emotions, they have their previous knowledge, they have previous experiences, and they create knowledge based on or in relation to these experiences and this knowledge. And they construct new meanings. So if we can imagine it as a wall, they build up on the bricks, on the previous layers to add to that body of knowledge. And of course, some of the principles of constructivism is that knowledge is constructed actively rather than passively absorbed. So we need to make an effort, active effort to construct that knowledge. Learning is an active process, meaning that it is not the role of teachers to put the knowledge into the heads of students, but rather the students need to actively construct that meaning. It also says that knowledge is socially constructed. That's why so many active learning takes place in groups, takes place in a social context where students need to communicate to each other, when they need to make that meaning through the interaction with other students and with a teacher. And what might sound as a contradiction is that knowledge is also personal. So each individual learner has a distinctive perspective, distinctive point of view based on this existing knowledge. And the knowledge of each student will differ. But having the understanding, having the insight into different perspectives might actually give us a deeper understanding of the knowledge that we are constructing. And this all links as well to the student-centered approach, which can be defined by 5 key changes to the practice. And with the active learning, it is essential that we change the role of the teacher. The teacher, as I said, is no longer in the front talking to the students and transmitting the knowledge, trying to fill their heads with the knowledge, because it doesn't really work. It doesn't create a deeper understanding. With active learning, teacher's role is to moderate, to be a facilitator of learning, be a friend in that learning, being on the same level with the students, and no longer a sole source of knowledge. So that's why it needs the approach to learning needs to change from the frontal transmission, from a teacher-centered approach to a student-centered approach. And to do that, there needs to be a different balance of power. So basically, the teacher needs to give control over to the students. And this is sometimes a very big obstacle for the teachers who are used to working in a lecture style, when they are used to transmitting that knowledge and working in a traditional environment, even with the setup of the classroom where the desks are screwed to the floor sometimes, and you cannot really move them. And giving the power, redistributing the power to the students is essential when it comes to active learning. So students are in the center of the process. They need to start being in charge of their learning. It also means responsibility for their learning, taking that responsibility for themselves. The second key change is the function of content. So I already said that the skills are more important than the knowledge itself, but also with following the constructivist approach, learners actively construct their knowledge by making meaning to the previously acquired knowledge. So this links nicely to the constructivism. The role of teacher being a facilitator, not the only source of expertise. The responsibility of learning being put to the students, and student agency is very important here. This is a very trendy word right now, but having that ownership, being autonomous and self-regulated as a learner, being in charge of your learning, taking responsibility for that. This is all very important in active learning. But it also is important because it builds resilience, it builds grit, it contributes to the growth mindset, so to the development of the student as a whole. And last but not least, and I didn't say much about it yet, is the role of the evaluation and the process that we go through, which is very important. And for the active learning to be effective, the teacher needs to implement assessment for learning and assessment as learning. So not only the grades as measured by the number, but also effective formative assessment strategies to support students as learners. And I think this is a very important part of that active learning process. Without the evaluation from the teacher, but also peer assessment or self-reflection, active learning would not be as effective as it could be. And of course, the benefits of active learning, there are many, there are plenty. It builds both knowledge and understanding, which students can then apply to new contexts to solve new problems. It fosters students' learning and their autonomy. It develops the skills that we would like the students to develop, so-called future skills. It helps to develop thinking skills, metacognitive skills, reflection, which I think is one of the most important skills in the 21st century. It usually involves collaboration, although we also might have active learning that happens in the individual form. And very often it doesn't require any additional cost. It can be done in any classroom. It's mainly the change of mindset of the teacher. And the active learning activities, to be effective, they must make sense to the students. So the students need to understand why they're doing certain things and what is it for, what are the goals. The objectives, the learning goals need to be in front, need to be firstly given to the students so that they can make sense of what they are doing. And second of all, it must include the development of communication, of teamwork, of creativity by utilizing all the higher order thinking skills. And with the examples of active learning, of course, the most often used, and I think that I cannot find a teacher who does not use them in the classroom, is working with other students on the project. It can be a small subject-specific project. It can be a bigger project, interdisciplinary one. It can be a whole school project. And for example, right now, apart from this project, Novigado, we also, even in the distance learning, we have some projects that students can collaborate on using different tools, ICT tools. For example, investigating what does it mean to be happy in during the time of a pandemic. So there are many different projects that you can do with the students right now. But active learning does not have to be very big. It might be something small, like making a presentation that shows your understanding, shows the students' understanding of a certain topic based on some reading that they have undertaken before. or creating a podcast or a screencast or a video that summarizes what they've learned, what are the most important aspects of a certain topic. It might also be peer tutoring or small group work where students are going to share with each other what are the key elements of the content that they are going through. When they, for example, explain themselves how to solve an equation in mathematics. So it doesn't have to be very big, but it is the student's role to be active in that process. And I thought that I would include two of my favorite methods for active learning. The first one is discussions. And there is a very good post that is hidden under the first QR code. It is a post by Cult of Pedagogy, which is a podcast. But Jennifer, who is hosting the podcast, lists, I think, 17 different discussion protocols that you can use in the classroom to make your classroom more active. And the second example would be utilizing thinking routines. I don't know if you heard about Harvard Project Zero, which is one of my absolute favorites. They have created a whole list of different thinking routines that are aimed at different things, and you can use them at every lesson, also in distance learning. And there are plenty of resources on their website, and you can simply go there and have a look. There are videos, there are explanations of how it works. And it might be something that you can embed in any of the lessons. And last but not least, I would like to end with learning zones of the future classroom, which I think nicely, hopefully nicely will link to what Xavier will talk about. So to be active, students need to investigate, so be active researchers. Students need to create. They need to be need to create content, need to engage in creative reimagination of the content. They can present their product. They can give and get feedback. They can interact with each other, but also with the teacher. They can collaborate, exchange, develop their communication, and finally, they can develop. And the active learning environment promotes informal learning, independent and self-regulated learning, which I think is essential in today's world. Thank you.